Real Madrid started the season in a classic way for the Champions League winner. It would be right to say that Carlo Ancelotti's side picked up exactly where it left off in the last May. The ever cool, calm and collected Italian once again showed and continues to show that he is pretty good and effective, working with well-functioning and established teams, very much like Sir Alex Ferguson. In the situation where he don't have to invent something and could simply rely on the well-oiled mechanism of play, Ancelotti feels the most comfortable and is capable to get really good results for years. Speaking of that, we should recall his AC Milan days, where he successfully preserved basically the same group of players, adding to the core of the team only 2 or 3 important figures each season, mainly out of absolute necessity, due to devastating injuries or critical age of some footballers. Only a few weeks ago it seemed that this time the experienced Carlo could avoid of doing even that, despite the arrival of Antonio Rüdiger and Aurelien Tchouaméni, but Casemiro's completely unexpected transfer forced the Italian to adapt and try something new. The Brazilians' decision to swap the prosperous Real for the desperately struggling Manchester United was surely surprising. Indeed, Casemiro more than doubled his wage and got a longer contract, but according to the player himself, it wasn't the biggest factor. Actually, it's easy to believe him, given the fact that the bulky South American, even after 3 Champions League triumphs in a row, has been one of the lowest paid footballers in the whole team. Suffice it to say, back at the time, even the reserve goalkeeper Kiko Casillas earned more than him, which is simply ridiculous, bearing in mind that Casemiro by that period was one of the best defensive midfielders in the world for years. Only in 2019, the Brazilian has signed a contract worthy of his talent and contribution, so we shouldn't question his words about money. So what prompted him to drastically change the environment? Well, perhaps the same thing that inspired to go in the same direction Rafael Varane, his good mate, the desire to release the ferocious pressure and spend the latter stage of career in a more comfortable, less stressful way. It's significant that Casemiro doesn't speak English at all, so playing at MU he will be living effectively in the bubble, without knowing who said what about him and his level of play in the press and social media, whilst in Madrid, with its enormous demands, it was absolutely unthinkable. On the other hand, Florentino Perez decided not to stay on the South American's way, knowing that right now his team is arguably best equipped to adequately replace the Brazilian after the acquisition of Tchouaméni. As a result, the young Frenchman, who has been purchased as a potential heir of Casemiro, was forced to take his place immediately, and it must be said Aurelien is coping well so far. In the recent games against Betis and Celtic, he matched his predecessor's numbers if we talk about defensive contribution, tackles, rebounds and the interceptions, albeit did it in his own, more finesse way, using mainly pace and explosiveness, and only then muscles. In fairness to Casemiro, we should mention that he is not short of elegance himself, despite his image of enforcer. The current MU midfielder is a very good passer with a pleasant technique. The appearance of Tchouaméni in the starting lineup, he still needs to prove on the long distance that Casemiro's shoes are not too big for him to fill, though is perhaps not only the main, but also the sole novelty. Otherwise, the team very much resembles its previous version, both individually and collectively. Vinicius Junior and Fede Valverde reaffirmed their progress. The Brazilian even solidified his drastically improved productivity by scoring in 4 consecutive La Liga games, and the ever mobile and energetic Uruguayan conclusively established himself as a starter. Meanwhile, the role of Marco Asensio diminished even further at the beginning of the campaign. The Spaniard, who has less than a year left on his contract, effectively dropped out of active rotation, getting only 16 minutes of playing time as things stand. Asensio's biggest issue is that his shortcomings coincide with the team's ones. Given that Real, despite their prodigious skills and experience, continues to be one of the most static sides in Europe, Ancelotti needs specific qualities at this position, something that Marco, with his superb work rate, simply couldn't offer. Unlike the resilient Valverde, who is capable to give around 11.5 kilometers per game and hefty defensive contribution, which are crucial for the team's balance. This graphic shows how far Madrid are from the other Champions League contenders with regards to distance covered, but the truth is that this deficiency doesn't prevent Ancelotti's side from winning thus far. In the games against Eintracht Frankfurt and Celtic, 2 fast-paced outfits, Real ran approximately 10 kilometers less each time, but convincingly won on both occasions. The match in Glasgow was especially telling. In the first 15-20 minutes, the guests were forced to weather the storm, but eventually the class and worth of the best club in Europe manifested themselves. This sort of composure also allowed Real to start season in Primera with 3 consecutive away wins, for the first time since 2017. Although, let's be honest, in this particular case, Real were quite lucky to enter the campaign on the road, taking into account that in each instance the Italian coach and company had basically the whole week of preparation. In other words, we are much fresher than usual when it comes to away matches. Therefore, the continuing reconstruction of the Santiago Bernabeu has served Madrid well in a completely unexpected way. Will be a good omen 5 wins on the spin at the beginning of the new Primera edition remains to be seen, but the stats and the common sense are saying that this feat shouldn't make you too excited. In the previous 5 decades, Real eventually lost the title on 2 such occasions out of 3. As for Ancelotti himself, 12 years ago, being at the helm of Chelsea, he also won 5 games on the trot in the Premier League in August and in the early September, following a very prolific season, but after that completely lost his way. On the other hand, the history tells us that Madrid didn't win La Liga twice in a row with the same manager since the distant 1989. As for the unflappable Carlo, despite his unique achievement, 5 titles in all major European leagues, he also hasn't been able to repeat the success the following year, twice settling for the 2nd place. He also has been fired from Bayern in the early 2017-2018 season and left PSG right after his League One triumph, heading to Madrid. This time, everything goes well yet, but in a stark contrast to the last campaign, Real have to withstand the competition with much stronger Barcelona that are currently rapidly gaining momentum. So in order to finish ahead of the arch-rival, Ancelotti should do even better job than last season, especially in terms of rotation. And it must be said that so far the Italian is distributing minutes rather in Zidane's style, being generous to almost all and keeping in mind the overall picture. In 5 first La Liga games, only Thibaut Courtois and Vinicius spent on the field more than 80% of playing time. Karim Benzema could have been alongside them, but he got injured against Celtic. As for others, they avoided heavy workload and have a good chance to stay frisky at least for the first part of the season. Luka Modric in particular, the evergreen Croat, quietly is getting near and near to become the oldest permanent starter in the decorated Madrid's history.